Welcome in, welcome one, welcome all, and most importantly, welcome back to the fantasy assessment. My name is Rahul. I'm here with my two great co-hosts, one returning, one new. How's it going, gentlemen? This is the fantasy assessment. Followers of the channel will remember a short-lived run of the show in the summer of 2023. Well, we're back, baby. We're back and better than ever to deliver dynasty advice for your rosters. Like I said, I'm here with my co-host. Let me go over to Jerry Wilkie first. How are you doing today, my man?
What's going on? Excited to be back. Had that little hiatus, but now NFL season's over. Well, NFL season never ends, but the 2023 season is over. Get into the 2024 season. We're back better than ever. We're going to be doing a lot more than just breaking down rosters this time around.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And over to our new co-host this time around, Chu Russell at Father Dynasty. How are you doing today, Chu?
Doing great. Glad to be in the off season. I feel like the NFL is the sport that never sleeps. I mean, we've got the combine behind us. We have free agency starting. Well, the legal tampering period starting here in a couple of days. So just excited to get back into it.
That's right. I remember this tweet from Matt Waldman. If you guys are familiar with him on Twitter, it was right after the Super Bowl ended, and he said, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile before because it's starting again." Something along those lines. And that's so true. This game never ends. I think the Super Bowl ending was for me the start of the 2024 fantasy season, and with that comes like you said, free agency, off season, of course, the draft. We'll get into all of that. But yeah, just to, for the first episode of the second season, let me remind everyone the fantasy assessment, we're here to give advice for your dynasty rosters. How do you take those teams, to write your names in the history books and win those championships? We're going to broaden the scope a little bit here. We're still delivering that advice, but we're going to be talking about a lot more of dynasty-wide trends, a lot of rookie content, actionable advice, just via different platforms than we delivered last off season. Before we get into the meat and bones of the show itself, let's take a quick look back at the NFL Combine, which was just this last weekend. Gentlemen, why don't we go around, maybe give one or two good or bad notable performances from the Combine. Chu, I'll start with you.
So bad. If I'm going to pick a specific performance, I've got to go Bucky Irving. I feel like when we saw so many, out of the running back group specifically, you had the Trey Bensons, you had a couple of these guys that are just having blazing 40s, especially at their size. And you have Bucky Irving, really the calling card. I mean, I know short area quickness is good too, but if you're going to be that small and, that compact, you can't be running a 4.55. And I understand that, at the combine, a lot of these things, it is, you have to be trained to kind of run the 40 as best as you possibly can. But I mean, even if he's going to run it a little bit better, he's still, pretty far behind a couple of these other guys that are the, prototypical sized backs. So I think there's tremendous concern of him going into the league. What is he able to do? Is he slippery enough to really be a Darren Sproles-esque back at his size? And I have a few concerns at this point.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. It reminds me a lot. It's giving the same kind of vibes of Kyren Williams coming out of college. That was a player that some people had as high as RB3 back in the Isaiah Spiller RB2 days, but then came to the combine under 200, ran a 4.5 plus. One thing about his profile that still stood out was his pass protection. That's what Kyren Williams was known for. Bucky Irving is, bottom of the class in pass blocking. So we might not see that kind of caveat, but that was an interesting one. I know a lot of people are fans of Bucky until that point, probably still, but up until then for sure. What about you, Jerry? Any performances that stood out?
I mean, we kind of thought it was going to happen, and I asked a couple people in another group chat, like, is there anybody that we think that could break the 40 or come close to breaking the 40? And a Texas buddy of mine said Xavier Worthy, and he did. And I mean, with the small frame that he is, and I know like the Garrett Wilsons and the Chris Olaves have come out in recent years, and they've showed you that you don't really need a big frame, and you can work out of the slot and still be successful in the NFL. So there is a spot for Xavier in the league, but I think he shot into possibly the end of the first round. maybe early second, maybe get that 5th-year option on him. Somebody like Kansas City takes him at 32. But I mean, he's got speed. He's got a little bit of a dropsy issue, but that could be worked on. But yeah, like just showing that speed. But because if you look at the list of like the top 40s in the history, really the best one on that list is maybe Chris Johnson. Everybody else really just hasn't been that good at the pro level. We obviously didn't get to see Henry Ruggs' full potential. Marquise Goodwin, Olympic guy was fast, but we really didn't get to see a lot of him. But the list is just guys that ran fast in shorts, and that's about it. And Xavier Worthy, we're hoping that he's not the next one on that list that just does that, and hopefully he could do something big in the NFL. And I think that he'll be all right. I mean, I think the right team needs him. Somebody like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or a Justin Herbert could probably make him into a star. Hopefully he doesn't end up on like the Bears or something like that, where his career is just wasted away.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you bring up about the fastest 40s. It's almost like if you want to see who not to draft in fantasy, look at the fastest people at running the 40s. But certainly a lot of buzz around, I mean, understandably, the fastest man ever at the NFL Combine. I'm sure we'll get into that kind of group of wide receivers a little later on. From that group, one I wanted to bring up was Troy Franklin, who I don't think his measurables or speed 4.4, 4.41, I don't think they really brought up too many red flags. We knew he was slender, 4.4, 4.35. There's not much difference. The part of his combine that I really didn't like looking back was the gauntlet. This guy was weaving left, right, and not center. Compared to someone like Odunze, who I think they could draw literally a straight line across like the midfield line, and Odunze was perfect. It just kind of speaks a little bit to, I don't know, I don't want to put too many words that haven't been founded, but speaks a little bit to Troy Franklin's like mentality. Did he prepare the right way for the combine? Because it didn't seem to me like he was ready for that kind of drill. But anyways, I'm sure we'll get into a lot of rookie content as the offseason goes on. So let's get into the show. We're back with the fantasy assessment, and as an homage to our previous iteration, we are going to be breaking down a Dynasty roster. So let me hopefully not be technologically inept here and share this screen. We good? Y'all can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. This is one of my teams. And this is Patrick has no Mahomes. It is a 12-team, 6-point passing touchdown Superflex league. There is tiered PPR. It's half point PPR, another half point for tight ends, another 0.2 for running backs. So small boost for pass catching running backs. And yeah, this team is pretty funny. You know, we've obviously got Patrick Mahomes, CeeDee Lamb, you know, a bunch of not no name, but small name guys. And of course, Lamar Jackson in my super flex. Pretty much no one else really even worth stopping on. I think I have like a rogue Trey Palmer, chilling on my taxi there. Yeah, that's right. So really not much player-wise to work with besides casually 3 players in the top 7 on KTC. What this team does have is the 101, which is the pick that I earned for my lack of performance, the 101, the 108, the 110, 201, 202, 204, and then 3 late thirds. So there's a lot of capital. I thought this would be an interesting team to bring to the table because it almost has a bit of a blank slate quality to it. So just putting this in front of you guys, why don't we go to Jerry first? Can you give me a brief summary of the strategy or direction you would take this team from this point?
Well, that 101 is pretty much guaranteeing you either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors, whichever one you feel you like better. You could even drop it down to maybe 102, swap with the guy, maybe pick up another pick somewhere. And that way, if you're higher on Neighbors, get him and still acquire another pick and then let somebody else have Marvin Harrison. But it's overall, I mean, it's really not bad. I mean, and especially being it is a super flex.
It's a super. Yeah, it says this
Okay.
view always has flex, but this is a super flex spot.
All right, I read it as just one quarterback. Okay. But yeah, I mean, you definitely got some pieces in there. There's definitely some cuttable pieces too, but you have two of the top quarterbacks for fantasy, a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, a up and coming tight end in Kate Otten. I think, I mean, it's definitely got pieces. I can see why it picked 101, but you do have some nice assets in there as far as draft picks go, and you could definitely, even if you want to, like, because this wide receiver class is so deep, you could even drop down even a little bit further if somebody else has a pair of first round picks, drop down from 101 to 104 and 106 or whatever if they have those, or make a couple 3-team trades like that, and I mean, it's hard to pass up a guy like Marvin Harrison, obviously, but a team like this might need a little bit more help, see if you could get some extra ammo. But having that 101, you could do a lot of things with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we'll definitely get into the value of the 101 very, very soon here. But first, Chu, what do you think? Similar thoughts to Jerry, or how would you approach rebuilding this team?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like two of the fortunate things are when you open up this team and you first see that you have Patrick Mahomes, that's a tremendous thing to build around, first of all. And yeah, when it's with the perspective of it's, the three, whenever I'm looking at a team, I kind of just try to pick out who jumps out at me. Who do I want to build around? I just want to pick those guys first. How many do I have? And then kind of go from there, look at draft capital and everything. I mean, Mahomes, Jackson, and Lamb, there's no question. They're studs right there. You can build around those guys. Sincerely, I mean, me loving a lot of various sleepers on, I have a dynasty team or two that are kind of just bottom of the barrel at the moment. So I fall in love with Chris Rodriguez, hoping that Damian Harris lands in a better spot. Yosavash on the Bengals. There's plenty of these guys where like I can like them and kind of hope for the best. And I mean, in a 12-team start 10, there's a need for depth there. So that's tremendously important for sure. So, I mean, a couple of those guys, if you are interested in hanging on to them and just kind of seeing if their value rises. But, like was said, I mean, there's plenty of cuttable people, but again, you also have tremendous draft capital, like we'll talk about in a second, to possibly move off that 101. And if anything, whether it be with the 101 or whether it be with another one, if you can maybe get some 2025 picks, first and or seconds, and kind of stretch this out to be like, all right, if it can't fully happen this year, then can it be between this year and next year? You really solidify a good, strong group of starters and maybe even a little bit of solid depth to really propel you to competing, not just, next year, but beyond.
Yep. No, I definitely hear you, and I'm gonna stop sharing just so I can get back to this page right here. I think we know who the key assets are on this team. It's not a long list, but no, I definitely hear you. When you think of rebuilding teams or teams that earn the 101, they usually don't have a single cornerstone asset to the team's name, and in this case, I would say this one has 3 of the very best first round startup pick caliber sort of cornerstone players to build around. Maybe a 4th asset, which is arguably a first round startup pick value, is the 101. So Chu here, how are you seeing kind of the value of the 101? Remember, this is, of course, it's super flex, which changes things, but 6-point passing touchdown as well. How do you see the 101?
So, every league is different. I've been in plenty of different leagues where it's the 101 is the stubborn owner that's like, no, you have to give me, the moon, the sun, and the stars. And some it's more of like, I need, if I could get this quarterback and I could maybe slide back into the first and maybe get like, a future first or future second that works. So I think it's really all in just, thankfully you have it. So you're able to kind of navigate your league from a position of power, having 3 of those cornerstone guys, as well as the 101, some other firsts, some other seconds. So again, you don't have to take any sort of deal on moving back from the 101. I think if you're at that position and you're picking whoever you want of your top guy, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And I feel like even if you make that pick, I feel like you still have that time before you get to the start of the season through camp and everything, where, whether it's the Caleb Williams or, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr., they're not going to lose any value. If anything, it's going to ascend. They're going to make one good play. People are going to lose their minds. But if you're looking to move the 101 and what, in my mind, I like to get out of that, certainly with this roster and certainly with the number of starters, I think it would be tremendous if you'd be able to get another cornerstone wide receiver plus maybe like a future pick. So someone would be getting the 101 and they would be at least be able to space out the value over this player and a future. So they maybe wouldn't feel like it'd be quite as too much to give up. But I mean, you already have CeeDee Lamb. If you're able to get another one of those ideally top 5 guys, I'm sure some people would be a little hesitant to do that. But I mean, top 6 or top 8, I think is reasonable. That maybe like a future second or future first if you could. Again, I know you're trying to win now or as soon as you can, but still, again, look to the future and make sure that you're kind of hedging your bets just in case, misfortune happens with injuries and such.
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head on a couple of different points, both made by Jerry and yourself. Kind of the lack of talent, the lack of depth in this team means maybe a championship run isn't too feasible. So with that in mind, tearing down from that 101 kind of value to a cornerstone receiver and another future asset. So, all my eggs aren't in the 24 basket, really could be the way to go. What about you, Jerry? What are you seeing with the 101?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said, but I mean, it's all just timing is right too. I mean, I don't know if you guys have your set draft date set up, but the week that the draft is, or even the day that the draft is, I'm sure your league is just going to start talking deals and trades and getting ready to just everybody just go in and have fun. And so the 101 is worth a lot right now, but the day that your draft is, it could be worth a lot more. You could have a guy that just loves drafting and just wants to get every pick that they can. And or that might be you, and you want to get every pick that you can. But yeah, it's just the fun part about this is this is one of those rosters that becomes an orphan in a league where the guy just doesn't want to play anymore. But if you're like us being diehard fantasy guys, this is the kind of roster that like any one of us 3 would just love to take over. Somebody's not selling it, but like trying to sell it to you in a Facebook group saying, hey, I got this pretty bad roster. It does have Mahomes, it does have CeeDee Lamb, but it's got a bunch of picks. Those are the rosters that we jump on. And that's what's fun about what we do and playing this game. But yeah, I mean, there's so many places that you could go with that 101 and even the 108 too. I think like there's a lot of there's probably about 9 or 10 like certified first round talents in this draft, and obviously it depends on where they land in the real draft too.
Yeah. No, we'll get into kind of that mess or massive later picks, late first, early seconds that this team has. But sticking with the 101, I do have a question for both of you. Jerry first. If this team, we try to make a trade, we try to move off it, follow the advice that you guys both laid out, nothing comes to the table to get accepted. If you're on the clock with the 101 with this team, who are you picking? Would that be Caleb or would that be Marvin Harrison? Jerry?
I'm probably taking Marvin Harrison, and you have 2 quarterbacks that are locked up for at least more than 4 years. Lamar just signed last year, or maybe his was 4 years, but Lamar just signed last year, and then Mahomes has the rest of his life still with the Chiefs. So yeah, you don't have depth there, and Caleb could be a nice third quarterback or even a nice trade piece, but you need pieces that you could throw into the starting roster right now. And even if you're not competing in 2024, you still got to build up those starters. It's too bad there's not a Bijan coming out of this class because you need running backs more than you need wide receivers, but you do need multiple of both of those positions. So I would definitely go Marvin in my opinion.
Do you agree, Chu? Even in 6-point passing touchdowns, Superflex are such a premium. placed on quarterbacks. I mean, look at the state of the NFL. Can't even find 32 real life quarterbacks to play week on week. Would you do the same with the 1-on-1 if you had to pick?
I think the only wrinkle, which I know that it's already having Mahomes and Jackson, which is a tremendous embarrassment of riches to be able to build from. I would still probably go Caleb, and that's really the only reason would be it's not you need Caleb today because you don't have quarterbacks. The argument would be you've got two tremendous quarterbacks, and you absolutely don't need Caleb today. But in the sense of if you're going to make the pick, and again, ultimately not move off of it, picking what I feel like in a super flex league, and certainly even after that rookie draft, and probably even into starting the season, I feel like the liquidity of that pick and it being devalued once it becomes a Caleb Williams versus Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, anything like that. I just trust that Caleb Williams will hold his value a little bit longer. But that being said, then it's just figuring out, hey, I mean, if Caleb Williams actually starts to perform tremendously well, you can pick maybe between he and Lamar Jackson. Would you rather trade Lamar Jackson? I probably would not, but I mean, it gives you a little more flexibility in saying, I guaranteed, even if I move one of these three, still have two solid quarterbacks and can continue to build forward. But it would ultimately be if you pick Caleb Williams, possibly still moving off of him sooner than not.
No, that's a good point. And I think, everyone talks about BPA, best player available, and maybe that lends itself more to the thinking. But I wanted to push back a little bit on one thing you said, is that the idea that Caleb retained his value for longer than Marv on the other side. Let me give you an example of Bryce Young and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Bryce Young's not the prospect that Caleb is. Neither is Jackson, who is a former Ohio State teammate. But I'm sure if you look at KTC now, or you poll your average Dynasty Twitter fan, they're probably still ranking JSN higher and JSN closer to the value that he was drafted at, whereas Bryce is almost completely cratered off the map. Would you say that quarterbacks retain that value better, or is it the wide receiver that is a safer prospect?
I would say if it's I know we'll ignore my Panthers gear behind me. I'm not blind to how terrible that season was, and even looking forward, it's going to be, a very uphill battle. But in terms of that, I know when I say like with Bryce Young on the Panthers, it was from that perspective, it was a small quarterback, an O-line that lets him get destroyed, a offensive scheme that is baffling to me in terms of how long it takes for everything to develop. He doesn't have time to be back there. A lot of the infighting with the front office and everything. It just seemed like the organization as a whole, starting from the top, was just not good. And a lot of the time, regardless of how good the prospect is, some can kind of overcome it, but a lot of them, it's if you get put into a bad system, if you get put into a bad environment, if you're not surrounded by really any weapons at all, no offense, Adam Thielen, it can kind of tarnish the talent and maybe kind of stunt the growth. And so in that instance, I certainly understand that. And I mean, with JSN underachieving, maybe he's also surrounded by two consummate professionals in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So I think he's going to have, a step up year this upcoming year. But yeah, I certainly understand that. I just think in the broader scope, I generally trust the quarterback versus the wide receiver in terms of value. And that's also super flex wise. If this was one quarterback, of course, no question at all, Marvin Harrison Jr. But yeah.
No, that all makes sense. Things to ponder as if you're in my spot, you got those two quarterbacks. Do you go Caleb? Do you go Marv? It's generally the best to consider who's gonna have the highest value, today and 3 weeks and the end of the season next year. And with the hype that both of them have, but a quarterback probably will have. There's a case to be made that Caleb would retain the value better. But moving on to our next topic, and I'll start with you, Jerry. We kind of touched on it. This is a very deep wide receiver class. The value of those late firsts, early seconds, projected up to 7 NFL first round wide receivers in this class. What would you be looking to do with those picks on this team? How are you kind of valuing those later picks in this draft? Are you trying to move them? Are you waiting to stay there and to call your shot? What would you think of doing with those?
Well, obviously, like most of us, we're going to go in with a list of players that we have our eyes on. So that's going to be that. So, a couple players that I personally am into. I'm into Braylon Allen. I'm into Blake Corum. I'm into A.D. Mitchell. Touch a little bit on Worthy, so see where he lands, and kind of just go from there and see where I am coming up in the draft and who's still on the board. And there are more than a handful of wide receivers, and with the picks that you got, let me just bring them up real quick. 101, 108, 110, 201, 202, and 204. So like you could probably grab 3 of them, to be honest, especially being in a super flex, because we're probably going to get Drake May going. We're probably going to get Brock Bowers going. We're probably going to get JJ McCarthy going, especially if he goes to somewhere like New England or Vegas, where he has a chance to start this year. So you're going to push some of those wide receivers down. I'd probably stick with what you have and where you're at and just utilize all my picks, unless, because I don't know if I would trade up with this roster. If anything, I would trade down, but you're already kind of at that cutoff being with the 202 and 204 where I'd want to trade down to. So I'd probably stick with the picks that you got and get 6 rookies and probably end up starting 4 of them for a majority of the year.
I mean, these guys are going straight into the lineup with the talent that I've been putting out there. But what about you, Chu? Like, how you agree with Jerry? How you see the value of those picks? And just to touch on one thing that he said is, stand pat. Call your shots, get your guys. Would you look to make all those? I think 5 picks from 18 to 16. Would you look to make all those picks?
So the great thing in most any of my dynasty drafts, I feel like, especially when I'm getting to like the mid-second, early to mid-second, especially getting into the early third, that's when I'm really just sitting there looking like, who wants to move up? Who wants to move up and give me, like, let me move back a couple of picks and give me a third next year, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of nickel and diming to where it's like, I know that we can all believe that we know what we're doing and we're going to hit on every third. And, there's only so many, of the Terry McLaurins and those sorts of guys that end up working out for us. But it ends up being a cheap way to be like, all right, well, my tier is probably this big. So if I'm seeing myself move back a couple of spots, like a little deeper into the third, I'm okay with that, knowing I can at least get this guy. And also I'm getting that kind of cherry on top next year, getting a chance at another type guy just like that. So I feel like that's kind of the way to kind of just keep the ball rolling when it comes to year over year, having enough picks that whether they be something you're trying to use or something you're trying to include as a throw in, as of course you're trying to build depth with your team, whether it be through the draft or whether it be pairing a third and a player to kind of level up and get a better player.
No, I think that was very well said. I mean, really the name of the game, of course, is to win championships, but it is value accumulation. And sometimes that is that, like the marginal edge. Do I move back if I see the wide receiver 6 and the wide receiver 8 in the same tier? Do I move back those 2 or 3 spots and pick up a little extra piece? It could go a long way. On this kind of note, a theme that I've seen in maybe the last 2 or 3 days since the combine is there's some creators who are out there kind of pumping the brakes. Guys, we're not going to get 20 wide receiver ones coming out in the 2024 class. There's no Puka Nacua. There's no Tank Dell every year. Not every young wide receiver is going to be an every week stud, but that's kind of the market that we're in. We love wide receivers in Dynasty. We love young cornerstone assets. And we want to be the ones who find, the next Puka Nacua. Is that making us ignore some red flags that, we might have raised with A.D. Mitchell having the worst yards per route run in this class, the weight of Worthy or Franklin? What do you think, Jerry, about kind of the content you've been seeing, like Dynasty evaluation? Are we going in a little bit too hard on these rookies? Do people need to take, maybe a second, a word of caution?
I don't think so. I mean, again, the biggest thing is not really the biggest thing, because talent is going to always overcome situation, or not really situation, but talent is always going to overcome. You know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that obviously they're not all going to be wide receiver ones, like you said, and there's still like even going back to the past couple of years, Tank Dells are moving up in there, and your Nico Collins are moving up in there. Puka Nakua is getting up in there. Hopkins is like DeAndre Hopkins. He's 30 years old now, but he's still in a spot where he could be. I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver one in Tennessee, and he could, with Will Levis, he could be maybe cracking the top 12, top 15 again, maybe one last time. So it's all just about like just building the wide receivers, because you could play in especially in this specific format, you could play 5 of them, 3 starters, and then 6 of them because you got the super flex, but 5 of them for the most part you're going to most likely play, unless you beef up those wide or running backs. So you just want to get guys that are like, get the guys that you think are going to be utilized on a weekly basis, and maybe if somebody has 4 targets, 2 catches for 38 yards, I mean, yeah, that kind of sucks, but you're not going to get wide receiver 1 numbers from anybody. Like Justin Jefferson puts up bad numbers too. So
no, I, at the end of the day, no one has the answers. If we had the answers, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. We'd probably be chilling by the beach somewhere with all of our winnings. No, but yeah, it's maybe it's a cyclical process, but I almost feel like I haven't seen enough negative content, and maybe by this time of the year, we're probably used to more like prospect fatigue coming in and people saying like, no, there's no way that this receiver we've seen do well for 3 years is made out to be all that. It just feels like there's a little bit something different in the water this time around. But moving on to our next topic, and I think Chu, you talked about it a little. We've been talking about this, but a team like this, bereft of depth, probably not competing in 2024. Say the rebuild horizon is at least a year out. What moves would you make to get this team competitive in 2025?
So for 2025, again, it's tremendous to be starting with the 3 cornerstone guys we're talking about. So that helps you right there, in terms of age, production, everything like that. Within the window you're talking, or even extended another 2 years beyond that, there's really no concern at all about those guys. And from that point, the sheer number of picks that you have, again, I know that depth is important, but I know when it's kind of starting out, it's all right, how can I get maybe another 1 or 2 or 3 cornerstone guys? And to be honest, again, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but really, if it's being able to build out and get 1 more, I would prefer cornerstone wide receiver, like 1 before, like within this season, ideally before the rookie draft, if it's at all possible, to know you're kind of building from that position of strength to say, I have my 2 quarterbacks, I have 2 top 5, top 10 wide receivers. I think you said it was a slight tight end premium in this one.
Half point, yeah.
Half point, okay. So that's something where if it's not too significant, you can maybe kind of attack that later when you're looking for an Andrews level. I guess by that time a Kelsey level guy may not exist, but if it's building around the quarterback and the wide receiver, then I know they're concerned with what the running backs look like right now. Even with this class specifically, you have so many later picks with the seconds and the thirds. I feel like there's going to be a good amount of running backs that you can attack. You can get a couple and just kind of have them on your roster. I feel like with kind of the landscape of the NFL running back at this point, getting a couple of guys that you feel like can fit well in a committee. And again, like you mentioned, Jerry, with, if you've got the talent and if you are able to get the opportunity, especially at running back, anything's possible. I know wide receiver, maybe it's not quite as prevalent for that, but running back, it's, any given Sunday, hop in a rotation and grab your spot, even as an undrafted guy. So I would say really heavily focus on getting another cornerstone wide receiver. Quarterback, you're fine. Again, we had that discussion of if you want to draft a quarterback at the 101 and trade it and everything, but focus on the wide receiver. And then, at those later picks, get running back depth, maybe some wide receivers, your guys, if there's any out there. So
yeah. Funny story, I actually did have Puka Nakua on this team as well, but I made a process trade in week 3 to send 5th-round rookie receivers. Played 2 games. I sent him away for a first, and now that first the 110. Yeah, the cornerstone was within reach. But I do like the thinking there. What about you, Jerry? How would you? What would be your mindset of like driving this team from this point to being competitive? What would you be looking to do?
Well, I'd probably start with just hitting on your rookie picks, not being wrong. No, but
draft the good players.
Yeah, just
Stop
draft
the
good
podcast
players.
now.
Don't
That's
draft
it.
any
Do that.
bad players.
Where the fireworks.
No, but yeah, I mean, Chu pretty much covered a lot of it. It's like I said, you could play. I mean, you could obviously play that many running backs too, but wide receivers are going to be very important. There's plenty of them coming out of this draft. You could grab probably 3 to 4 of them. The running backs are. I mean, we're going to see a running back or two go early in pretty much every rookie dynasty draft, and then might start seeing the dominoes fall. And you don't need to grab them, but like even especially with Derrick Henry leaving Tennessee, that was pretty much outside of CMC too, but that was pretty much like the last of the bell cow backs. Like all 32 teams pretty much, well, 31 teams outside of San Francisco pretty much run multi running backs. So even if you're not getting the James Cook or you're not getting the Raheem Mostert or just other examples, there's RB2s on those teams that could fill in your depth and still give you pretty good numbers. And you're going to get a 200-yard game out of Devon Achane. You're going to get two to 3 touchdowns out of Miles Sanders, even if he's not the starter. So fill it in with like RB2s and but younger guys too that you could carry for another couple of years. And yeah, just have fun with rebuilding it. This is, like I said, this is one of those teams where it is a rebuild team. And if you're that into fantasy football like we are, that's the kind of challenge that we want. We don't want to. I got a couple teams too. Maybe we'll do one of mine on our next show that is a complete rebuild. But I actually enjoy doing. I got teams that are ready to win the championship now, and I got teams that I actually like rebuilding. I mean, it sucks paying the money to play and not win anything, but it's fun being the GM and building the team how you want to build it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a team like this really just encapsulates like what we all, us 3 and people watching like love about Dynasty. It's just that ability, envision, I'm here and I've, put together the stash and I can see myself getting there in a year, in 2 years. That's just like why we love this game, so much. But to build on something that both of you talked about, we talked about a lot of wide receivers, but with running backs, bring it back to this class specifically. We might be in the position to draft RB1 in this class in the late first. I honestly haven't seen one, being put in the first round yet. Is there kind of a tier break for you guys, in your rankings, or where do you have the first running back kind of slotting in as things stand right now?
So certainly wants his landing spots that are really figure out how many quarterbacks are really going in the first. But I can kind of see it as the kind of around like the 109, 110 possibly. That also would depend on landing spot as well. If you're seeing, like my top 3 guys being Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, and Marshawn Lloyd, and I'll squeeze Jalen Wright in there. Ray Davis is just on the outside of that, but there's so many of these guys. I mean, I feel like they can do a bit of everything. I feel like they have the build to withstand, again, like we're talking about, not really a bell cow role because we don't need that anymore. But someone who could come in and be the 1B to somebody else's 1A and maybe step up in those injury weeks and that sort of thing. So that is a unique thing with this year's draft. Maybe we say that exact phrase every year, is the sheer number of quarterbacks we're going to see going and the number of wide receivers that I think are top tier enough that will push the running back down. And in today's NFL, I mean, it's the running back doesn't mean nothing to the NFL. I think that maybe was a bit overblown this past year or so, but it's just a different perception of how they value them in terms of what those second contracts are going to look like if they even really happen quite the way you want them to. So I feel like being able to get these running backs, in the late first, in the seconds, and these guys being strong committee backs for 2-3 years to come, that's tremendous value.
Yeah. I mean, maybe next week will tell us a lot about where the NFL is on running backs. I mean, this is a historic running back class. Maybe that says more about, the players not being able to get that second contract out of the team that drafted them. But Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, there are going to be a lot of moving pieces before we add these rookie running backs to the into the mix. I did want to touch on one particular rookie you said, and that's Jonathan Brooks, who I love the tape. This guy reminds me a lot of Aaron Jones with kind of that slipperiness that he has. But with the ACL injury, probably is the biggest knock I've really heard on his profile. Maybe a lack of production in earlier years, but he was, of course, behind Bijan Robinson for his time at Texas. But Jonathan Brooks is the kind of player that someone like myself or people in this rebuilding phase might be okay taking and adding that running back and not really worrying about limited production in the first season. He's the kind of guy too that, if he comes back, we just saw Breece Hall, but that's Breece Hall. But he could come back and from weeks 10 to 17 of the upcoming season, average like 15 points a game once he fully gets up to speed. That Jonathan Brooks is a specific name that could be seeing could work. Several of my words there could work for a rebuilding team, even though he is a running back. Moving on a little bit, but staying obviously on this topic, let's get specific. Let's get down and dirty. What are some specific trades you guys would make with this team? To give some context, an offer that I did already turn around was Puka Nacua from the guy I sold him to. It was Puka Nacua and a 25 first. I turned this offer down. It does sound kind of like a construction both of you guys have brought up. But Jerry, what do you think about an offer that offer specifically, that kind of construction, or where would you go for a specific trade kind of that you put together?
It's hard to, without seeing the other rosters, really answer the question. But yeah, I mean, it's not a win in 2024 team, so I would be looking at 2025 first, 2025 seconds. We do have a pretty decent list of who's coming out next year. Good wide receivers again. I think it's a better running back class next year, and a handful of quarterbacks too. I think this quarterback class is going to be better than next year's, but there's going to be some guys next year to look at. If you're going to go the Caleb Williams route or Drake May route, I would probably look at trading Lamar and just trying to see what I could get from that. And even if obviously Caleb can bust. I mean, anybody can, but you'd still have your two quarterbacks in Caleb in Caleb and Patrick Mahomes, and get the most that you can out of Lamar coming off the MVP season and having just the 1 year out of his. Again, I should have looked up the contract. However many years he just signed last offseason.
Yeah.
So specific players I don't have in mind, but I would just go all in on moving Lamar and just seeing like basically who the top bidder is, whether that be a team that is stacked at quarterback and just wants to add another, or a team that's light at quarterback, kind of like you are, and you can help them out a little bit.
Yeah, no, that I think those are the kind of two avenues that I'm considering. Mahomes at a 6-point passing touchdown, no offer can really come close to compensating you, but Lamar and the 101, those are kind of the pieces that I'd be looking to dangle if we were to maybe not make it specific, but kind of what cornerstone receiver, 25 picks. Would you try to get, a Garrett Wilson type, or would you go, let's say, like Brandon Ayuk plus Tank Dell plus a piece, or are you going, for the cream of the crop, like a top 7 receiver?
I'd probably go the 2 to 3 wide receiver route with a couple picks too. So an Ayuk and a Nico, or a Ayuk and Tank, and um, even throw like an older guy in there. Like I mean, Cup still does have some value, but maybe an Ayuk and a Cup and a pick or something like that, because Puka's the new hot shiny new toy, and Stafford maybe only has a year left, so people could be trying to move Cup while everything's still maybe starting to fall apart there in LA.
Yeah. Because to play devil's advocate to kind of what we've been talking about, but also maybe general dynasty mind, there is a universe where this team could contend in 2024, with
Nah,
the kind of the cornerstone pieces established, the wide receiver one, for God's sakes, is on this team. The war chest of picks. How, if we were to flip it on its head, who would you look at, Chu, if you're trying to turn this quickly into a contender?
I think if it's quickly, it's going to be moving the 101, and it's going to be looking for something like, I mean, if you'd be able to send the 101 and get like an Amon Ra, which maybe not. If you could instead, and you guys mentioned Ayuk, and that was actually one of the first ones I looked at and thinking, all right, well, he's maybe towards the back end of that top 10. So could you get him and maybe either add another pick in there, or like we were saying, it's getting 2 wide receivers. So Ayuk and maybe someone that's a bit older but still has uh, some good value and good production. But I think the trick would be, well, the 101 is a tremendous piece to be able to move. How much value can you get now that whoever that other team is that, is looking to acquire the 101, if they're getting it, they likely have, I mean, it's either enough on their team to where it's like Caleb will push me over the top, or if
Mhm.
they're thinking, I have these 3 good players left on my team, just take them, give me Caleb, and then I'll see you in like 4 years when I have a decent team. So I mean, if you can run into that, definitely please chase that down. But like Jerry was saying, I know if we could see the other teams, and maybe it'd be more of like, oh, we can see these 2 teams maybe are kind of vulnerable with a couple of pieces, but I mean, really, what are they going to do with them? But yeah, those would be the first ones I look at. Some of the bottom third of the league, just to kind of see, hey, do you have another 1 or 2 guys where maybe not quite as useful on that team?
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally hear you, and it's like it's almost on this kind of bubble where there's this exciting project with this team. The 101 really is the crux of, am I going to make this? Uh, let's leave contending immediately aside, but am I going to make this into a powerhouse again? It depends what kind of haul I can get for the 101, or the generational player attached to it, to kind of turn things to a different point of view, which again maybe the general dynasty player might not do. What would you think about trading the 101 for a Bijan, Brees, or Gibbs plus plus a little bit more, or whatever you think is fair? But what do you guys think? Let me go Chew first. What do you guys think about trying to get one of those untouchable running backs?
So for me, I think it would really depend on what that plus is. I know if, and I would assume the plus is whatever the other thing is certainly not near the value of whatever the running back would be.
Yep, yep.
Um, but that would be, I know I've done this before in Dynasty where it's like, all right, well, let me go ahead and trade for this top 5 running back, and that'll put me over the top. I can definitely get into playoffs, and then I can kind of see what happens. And then ravaged with injuries, stuck with that running back because he was the one that got injured, plus some other people. Now he's viewed as the old guy that no one wants him anymore. Now, I've had those tough instances where it's like you go a little too soon, and then it kind of resets the window. Like, all right, well now I have an extra year, hopefully, on this rebuild. But again, you are saying younger running back, so I don't think there's the tremendous concern there that these guys are going to age out by next season or anything like that. But I would be hesitant to do that. Certainly this time in the offseason,
Mhm,
when, I don't think that any of the running backs in this class are going to come in and, dethrone any of the guys that you just said from a dynasty perspective.
mhm.
But as we have a lot of these free agents find new teams, as these rookies actually have landing spots, which tremendously, their values will go up and down, but we'll spike a number of values for these running backs. I would probably be more than willing to wait on that. And that could be a deal maybe you make closer to the beginning of the season once there's more running backs and more hype on these other guys to use it as kind of a smokescreen to get them for hopefully a little bit cheaper. But
Yep. I mean, I just think we're in a very interesting point where the three running backs I named are probably the only three running backs I really want to buy in Dynasty. It's just, to give you like a Rashad White as an example. That's a running back who just finished his second year. He was RB4, the RB4 in PPR, an RB1 in all formats. And yet, no one's really clamoring to buy Rashad White. I think people are just, me included, people are really wary of changing situations. Of course, a free agency with the draft, and then a whole summer for catastrophic injuries to happen. It's just a very tough time to buy running backs. Is that kind of where you are, Jerry, with the idea of buying running backs, or are you more willing to make a deal if the value is there?
I'd be willing to make the deal if the value is there, but I'm not that I don't want any of those three running backs. I'm probably not sending the 101 for a package to get one of them back again. I'd rather just go wide receiver heavy and just fill in the running backs with just guys, basically. I'd be looking into Rashad White. I mean, if that's an option that's out on the table, maybe for your later first or early second, get a little package there, might do something like that. But again, like you said, with the landscape of free agent running backs too, we got to see where everybody goes first. Like, I don't want to. I mean, we had Devin Singletary had a decent year in Houston last year. Dameon Pierce kind of just fell off the map. He was hurt too. But now Barkley might go in there, and I know Singletary is a free agent, but Barkley might go in there and kind of push both of those guys out of the way, where you could send a third or a fourth for Singletary after having the year that he had, and you might not get any return for him because they bell cow Saquon Barkley or something like that. So definitely wait and see how the landscape fills out first. But I really wouldn't be too aggressive in going into those three that you mentioned. I mean, like I said, I'd love to have them, but I'm not really trying to sell the farm to get one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That all makes sense. Well, thanks to both of you guys. That was very helpful for myself, and I hope for all the viewers out there, people with similar teams, people rebuilding, people are excited to make rookie picks very, very soon. I hope that was a good time for all of you. Just to do a quick round of get to know us again. Jerry, why don't you tell the people where they can find you, what you're kind of working on, and maybe kind of ideas or topics we'd want to get into on the fantasy assessment this year.
Before that, we did have a lot of comments come in, and I'm not going to show all of them, but there is one that I do kind of want to maybe discuss a little bit from Jamie here.
Yeah.
Let's go down the screen here. He asked if we see this QB class resemble the 2021 class, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. Do you guys see any resemblances from these quarterbacks to that class? Like how many go in the first round and how the class could shape up?
True.
I'm not sure. The tricky piece of this is looking at a couple of the guys like the Bo Nix and the Michael Penix, some of the guys where I feel like they're on that bubble and where are they going to land? I don't know. At this point, I can want it to be a tremendous amount of quarterbacks in the first round. But I think once we actually see where these guys land, I think it could be similar to the 21 class, but you have the Trevor Lawrence being a transcendent generational talent, Caleb Williams being spoken about in a similar light, maybe not quite as glowingly, but pretty darn close. But I'm hoping this class can be better, to be honest with you, but that remains to be seen. I'm trying to let the rookie hype fade off me a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the 2021 class, looking back on it now, was it really all that great, both from an NFL and a fantasy point of view? My apologies to Jamie. I'm so out of date with technology that I didn't know we had comments. Are there any other ones we want to pull up here?
No, I mean, Jamie's talking to a couple of guys here. Josh chimed in, and when we were talking about wide receivers, they mentioned wide receivers when we were talking about just breaking down your team. They mentioned a couple guys, mentioned a couple running backs, but yeah, just Jamie just showing support like he does with every show, and definitely appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I could see where he's coming from asking that question, like Caleb Williams compared to Trevor Lawrence, both coming out of college. I think this class is going to be quite a bit better, and it's easy to say that in hindsight because we've had we've seen Justin Fields play football, we've seen Mac Jones play football, we've seen Trevor Lawrence really not have the year that he should have had yet for a 101. So we're still like the 2024 guys are basically just hype right now. Like that's we got to see where they land and how their careers go. But I could definitely see 3, maybe 4 of these guys be longtime starters or even stopgap guys like JJ McCarthy. I'm not super high on him at all, but I could see him having like a 10 to 12 year career, backing up guys throughout his career, maybe starting a max of like 40 games throughout his career, but just making money, just being a good backup, being a good locker room guy, being a good backup, and going in there if the main guy goes down. Drake May is my number 1 in this class. I like him over Caleb Williams. That could be a different discussion since we're running low on time. But like between May and Williams, that I think that right there just trumps the 2021 class just off the bat before getting too deep into it.
Yeah. I mean, we will certainly be getting deep into it. I think maybe we'll run a little mock draft in our next one of our next few episodes. But yeah, thank you both. Jerry, let the people know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on Twitter, X at Jerry Wilkie FM. You could search my name up on Facebook too. I'm a little bit more active on Facebook as opposed to Twitter. I'm in a couple groups that Jamie does run. Like any group that has the word fantasy football in it, I'm pretty much in. If I don't run the group, I'm in the group. So you can find me there. You're more than welcome to hit me up in the DMs there. If you have any questions, I'm answering. I work Saturdays and Sundays all day, and I get so many questions just while I'm at work. So running my machine, looking at my phone, like, should I start this guy or this guy? So, I mean, I'm available if you have any just personal start sit questions if you want. We have a what the hell is the word that I'm thinking of? You can just find us on Twitter and Facebook, and the Discord. Okay, we have a Discord too, that you could ask the questions there, and they run a lot of mock. I think we've ran like, I haven't even participated in any of them, but they've ran close to like 20 rookie mocks so far. Just fantasy rookie mocks, just anticipating where these players are going to go. Obviously, the mocks will change as the players are drafted and put on their teams, but it's a fun Discord. You got pretty much anything that you could ask for in the Discord too.
Yeah, great Discord. Let's not forget to plug Going for Two, and of course our man Jeff Lambert, who really has made all of this possible. Definitely hop in the Discord. I think 2 tools you kind of touched on the drafts, but both for rookie ADP and then for Scott Fishbowl when that pops up in the summer. Going for Two puts out ADP from actual mock drafts, and I find them to be much more reliable than your kind of standard ADP for what actually happens in drafts. But yeah, definitely hop in the Discord and get involved. Chu, what about you? Where can the people find you? What are you working on these days?
Yeah, check me out on Twitter and YouTube at Father Dynasty. So I've got the Father Dynasty podcast, but a bit of a hiatus in the off season. Certainly with us ramping up. I know rookie fever is in full effect. Free agency is going to be starting next week. I feel like certainly once free agency hits, it's really going to feel like it's nonstop if it hasn't already felt that way already. So definitely looking forward to really seeing these landing spots happening, where we think these rookies can go once we actually see where they land. I mean, it's going to be nonstop. So looking forward to talking about that. Hopefully at least once a week there on the YouTube channel, but certainly active on Twitter as well. So check me out there as well.
Yes, sir. And I am Rahul. You can find me on Twitter at nrahul11. And this has been the Fantasy Assessment. We'll be here every other Thursday. So yeah. Mark your calendars with one of those multi-week invites. I think you can do those these days. But every other Thursday here we'll be trading off with I can't remember the name of the Dynasty Gambit. Also a great show. We'll be trading off Thursdays with them. But that was episode 1 of the second season. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.